By the early 1980s, the motorcycle world was buzzing with change. Rally racing had exploded into the public eye, and nothing captured the imagination quite like the Paris Dakar. It was brutal, unforgiving. Thousands of miles of sand, rock, and blistering heat. To survive, a bike had to be simple, rugged, and light. Riders trusted machines like Yamaha's XT500, a thumper that could take punishment all day, or BMW's R80GS, a German twin that introduced a heavier but more refined idea of long-distance trail riding. Honda watched all this from the sidelines and decided they weren't going to copy anyone. They had bigger ideas. What if you could build a trail bike that didn't just scrape by in the desert, but actually made long rides easier? A machine with muscle for the open highway, reliability for weeks in the wild, and comfort that didn't leave you sore at the end of the day. Something bold, something new. That dream took shape in 1983 with the 45750R. At first glance, it didn't look like any trail bike riders knew. It was wide, heavy in the shoulders, and carried itself with a strange mix of ruggedness and elegance. This wasn't a stripped-down dirt bike. It wasn't a full-dress tourer either. It was Honda's attempt to invent a new category altogether, a big-bore adventure machine years before the world was ready for it. When Honda finally pulled the cover off the XLV750R in 1983, what they revealed was nothing short of daring. This was no single-cylinder trail mule. At its heart sat a 45-degree V-twin, displacing 749 cubic centimeters. It was air-cooled, but with an added oil cooling system. Honda's way of saying, why not both? Each cylinder carried a single overhead cam and 3 valves, 2 for intake and 1 for exhaust. Feeding it all were a pair of Keihin carburetors, sparked by a CDI ignition designed to fire clean and steady. On paper, it looked like a workhorse built to last forever. The V-twin wasn't about chasing revs. It was about pulling power, the kind of grunt you'd expect from a farm tractor. Honda engineers imagined this motor-hauling camping gear, spare fuel, maybe even a passenger, across hundreds of miles without breaking a sweat. And with a 5-speed gearbox driving a shaft final drive, riders could forget about cleaning chains or tightening sprockets. Just gas up and go. The rest of the package carried the same philosophy. A long, flat saddle stretched out like a park bench. Twin headlights promised visibility after sundown. A stout frame wrapped around the engine, built to shrug off abuse. Dry weight tipped the scales at nearly 485 pounds, over 540 with a full tank. That was no featherweight, but Honda believed the trade-off was worth it. Their goal wasn't a race bike, it was a continent crosser, a machine you could point at the horizon and trust. In short, the 4575R was Honda's first serious attempt at a big-bore trail machine, a blend of toughness, longevity, and comfort. Whether the world was ready for such a hybrid was another story. Honda's vision for the XLV750R wasn't just about the engine. They wanted a motorcycle that could survive the Dakar on Monday and still carry you comfortably across a state line on Friday. To do that, they borrowed design cues from both ends of the spectrum. From the dirt world came a tall stance, plenty of suspension travel, and a big tank for long stretches between fuel stops. From the touring side came a wide seat, generous ergonomics, and the promise of reliability day after day. Up front, dual headlights glared ahead like the eyes of a machine built for the future. The long saddle could fit a rider, a passenger, and maybe even a small dog if you felt daring. The color scheme, bright red, white, and blue, left no doubt who built it. It shouted Honda in a way that was impossible to ignore. But for all its bold thinking, the reaction was mixed, even confused. To many riders of the early 80s, this motorcycle seemed like an oddball. It was too heavy to be a true trail bike, too bare to be a real tourer, too refined to be a rough desert racer. Park it next to an XR600, and most buyers would pick the simpler single without a second thought. In truth, Honda was offering something that didn't fit neatly into any box. They were showing the world a category that would later be called adventure touring. But in 1983, that term didn't exist. Riders wanted their dirt bikes light, their touring bikes plush, and their Dakar mounts raw and rugged. The 4575R fell somewhere in between. Ahead of its time, yes, but hard to love in the moment. When you stacked the XLV750R against its competition, the gaps became clear. Yamaha's XT600 was light, nimble, and easy to fix with a wrench and a can of WD-40. Suzuki's DR offered the same formula, simple, cheap, and ready for abuse. Over in Europe, BMW's R80 GS had already planted the seeds of the maxi trail idea, but it carried the authority of German engineering and the reputation of durability earned in the Dakar. Honda's entry looked good on paper, but in the real world, it came with baggage. At nearly 540 pounds wet, it was heavy by any measure. Take it off-road, and it sank into mud like a refrigerator tipped on its side. Try threading it through city streets, and you fought the turning radius of a pickup truck. Sit too long in traffic, and the big V-twin roasted your legs like a summer barbecue. Out on the highway, things improved. The bike was steady, comfortable, and pulled hard like a rice tractor. But even here, it had rivals. Riders looking for touring comfort were already spoiled by Honda's own Goldwing or Yamaha's Venture, machines that came with fairings, luggage, and backrests. Against those, the 45th felt stripped down. Meanwhile, the Dakar crowd scoffed. They wanted bikes that could be lifted out of a ditch by two tired riders, not a machine that demanded a small army. The 45th wasn't fast enough to be exciting, wasn't light enough to be agile, and wasn't plush enough to be luxurious. It was a motorcycle stuck in the middle, too advanced for dirt riders, too raw for tourers, too different for the mainstream. In the end, Honda had built a machine that no group fully embraced. It was brilliant in concept, but awkward in execution, a bike that couldn't quite find a home. Honda pushed the XLV750R into showrooms between 1983 and 1986. On paper, it looked like the start of a revolution. In reality, it was more of a curiosity. Fewer than 10,000 units rolled out of the factory, and most of them went straight to Europe, France, Germany, Switzerland, even a handful in Austria and Belgium. The United States never saw it. Honda knew that its bold styling and strange mix of features would be a tough sell here. And that styling really was something. Bright red, white, and blue paint that looked like it had jumped off a comic book page. A seat so long it could have doubled as a family sofa. Dual headlights that gave it the face of a transformer. To Honda's engineers, this was futuristic. To many riders, it was just odd. Dealers struggled to explain what it was supposed to be. Was it a dirt bike, a touring rig, a Dakar racer for the street? None of the answers fit, and buyers walked away puzzled. Those who did take the plunge quickly realized they had a heavy, complicated machine that required a commitment most riders didn't want to make. By 1986, Honda quietly admitted defeat. Production ended, and the 4575R slipped into obscurity. It hadn't sparked the wave Honda hoped for. Instead, it stood as one of the company's strangest experiments, an ambitious attempt to bend the rules of motorcycling, only to find the world wasn't ready to follow. Looking back, it's easy to dismiss the XLV750R as a flop, but that misses the point. This motorcycle planted a seed. It proved you could build a large-capacity trail machine with a V-twin, with shaft drive, with the strength to haul gear across a continent. It showed that comfort and durability didn't have to be enemies of adventure. Without it, the Africa Twin, the bike that would become Honda's true off-road legend, might never have existed. The 45th was a student ahead of its class, too bright, too unusual, too early for the time it lived in. Riders in 1983 wanted simple carburetors, kickstarters, and chains you could oil in your own garage. The 45th offered something else, a vision of the future. By the time the world caught up, it was already gone. Today, it survives not as a bestseller, but as a story, a reminder that even giants like Honda sometimes gamble on ideas too far ahead of their moment. Collectors see it as a rarity. Enthusiasts remember it as a what-if machine. What if the world had embraced it sooner? Would the adventure bike boom have started a decade earlier? One thing is certain. The 750R dared to be different. It refused to fit neatly into a box. It pointed toward a horizon that only later generations would recognize. For that reason alone, it deserves a place in the history books. Not as a failure, but as a pioneer. Do you remember the first time you saw an XLV750R, or maybe its heir, the Africa Twin? Did it strike you as strange, or as something bold and exciting? Share your memories in the comments below. And if this story stirred a little nostalgia, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us again. Because the journey through motorcycling's forgotten legends is far from over.